kind of the interplay between the monks' rules and the lay people who kind of play off of it in those rules in various ways. So I gave a talk a few weeks ago now on dana, and that was one of the main messages that one of the ways that the Buddha found to ensure that that Buddhist communities practice dana was to basically put monks and nuns in a very vulnerable position. So I describe monks and nuns as being like house pets. We're kind of helpless. We cannot have a livelihood. We cannot be part of the exchange economy. Buying and selling are restricted by our vows. We cannot even raise food for ourselves or cook for ourselves. And although these rules are monastic rules, these are rules that the monks learn, and there are no rules related to this that require any particular behavior on the part of the laity. The laity has to comply with those rules, or monks are out of business. So this means that unless the lay community is practicing generosity, at least towards the monks and nuns, then basically the sasana disappears. It's the sangha disappears, so this is very interesting to consider how the Buddha did this, because I think he understood exactly what he was doing when he did this. Basically, he organized the sangha, the monastic sangha, but he did not organize the laity specifically. So as monks, we study this very large text called the Vinaya. It's about the length of War and Peace. It's about 1,500 pages long altogether. In the most recent English translation, which actually was completed, I think, in 1952, it encompassed 6 volumes. So it's this enormous text, and it's something that monks and bhikkhunis anyway study and are expected to be very familiar with. It is something laity does not study, and yet it really defines the form of a community that is utterly dependent on the laity in various ways. So a couple of days ago, I got an email from a student of mine who was asking, do Buddhists do anything where they hold hands? And I think what she had in mind, you'll often see Christian groups, Protestant groups, Baptists will do this, where everybody gets in a circle and everybody holds hands with one another. But she also referred to a video she had seen online. It was Thich Nhat Hanh, who's a Vietnamese Buddhist monk. And he was doing a walking meditation, and he was holding hands with other people, including women. And so I replied to it, Buddhists don't have anything against holding hands. It's usually not common in most Buddhist cultures. But as a monk, I wouldn't participate. And I was wondering about, Thich Nhat Hanh seems to have no problem with that. He follows the Vinaya. The Vinaya is followed in all Buddhist countries in Asia, except it's almost died out completely in Japan. It's the only country where it's substantially no longer in use. So I was wondering about that, and I thought, the rule itself basically states a monk is not allowed to touch a woman with lustful intentions, with lustful thoughts in mind. Now that's a rule, actually, it's a very tricky rule because, very few monks are perfect, and lustful intentions, lustful thoughts come up very easily. People are very sexual beings, and all you need is a coincidence between touching and lustful thought, and you've broken the rule. Now this rule in the Vinaya is one of the strictest rules. It is not one that you can just go to another monk and say, oh, I committed an error. You actually have to have a whole meeting of a monastic community to resolve this, breaking this rule. So it is a very serious rule, and one that monks do or should take very seriously. Now, in the Burmese tradition, what you find is that the laity, and particularly women, are very compliant in making it easy for monks to follow that, because a Burmese woman would never think of touching a monk, walking up, shaking hands. A lot of attention is given for seating. If a monk is in the car with other people, they always make sure the monk's not sitting next to a woman. So this is a rule in which it's a monk's rule, but the laity, know how to support that rule. And so it'll be done in a certain way, and it becomes part of a cultural norm also. What you find is in other Buddhist countries, the way in which this rule is supported by the laity is even stricter. So in Thailand, in Burma, it's perfectly okay for like in food offerings for a woman to hand a monk something. This is for you. And in Thailand, they don't do that. In Thailand, you have to put the food, like on a table, on a piece of cloth, and the monk can pull the food towards them. So it is, a restriction that is far in excess of the original rule, and yet it has become part of Thai culture. This is the way it's done. When Thai people see Burmese women handing food to a monk, they're probably shocked. But in fact, there's no violation whatever of the Vinaya in doing that. In the case of Thich Nhat Hanh, I even looked on YouTube to see if I could find an incident, and there he is doing a kind of silent walking meditation with a large group, and he's holding a little girl's hand. Okay? Now, if he takes his hand and he has a lustful thought, he's 85, so he may be immune to lustful thoughts, plus he's a very accomplished monk, then he's actually breaking the rule. And there is a tendency in Mahayana as compared to Theravada to be much more lax in the rules or compromise them in various ways. So if a rule becomes too inconvenient, a Mahayana Buddhist or a monk would say, well, let's forget about the rule now and do it the convenient way. Theravada tends to be much more orthodox. But you cannot say that the Thich Nhat Hanh was breaking a rule. It's all in his mind. You don't know what's going on in his mind, and I'm sure he is very careful. He is written on the Vinaya, and he is a teacher that trains monks and teaches them the Vinaya. So I'm sure he's very familiar with the rules. Okay, now the interesting thing is you get to the West.
Kind of different.
And the problem is, in the West, the laity has no idea that these rules even exist. You know, almost all Westerners, this is all news to them. Even Western Buddhists, most of whom have very little contact with monk, if they've even seen a monk. There's a Burmese monk that I met down in Austin, who had been in America for a very short time, once talked to me, and he said with this, very distressed tone in his voice, he says, "American women like to hug." So, what do you do? And of course, because he comes from a country where the women have a lot of understanding about this rule, and they support it. So it's actually, obeying the rule is kind of a collaborative endeavor. And he, unfamiliar with American culture, he's in a very uncomfortable position. He doesn't know what a polite response to that is. And so, he can actually, a woman can hug him, and it's possible not to violate the rule. Okay, but, if a woman walks up to hug him, he's got to do one of two things. Either he's got to get out of it, put his hand up, say no, or he's got to control his mind. And that is, put any kind of thoughts of sensuality. And I'm sure that, there are a lot of attractive American women and young Burmese monks. So this can be quite a challenge. Otherwise, he's violated the rule. Except, actually, if the woman initiates the hug and is the only one doing the hugging, she is the agent of the hug. She is the one that's doing the hugging. And the monk actually, because he's not doing anything intentionally, he's actually innocent, even if a lustful thought comes up. But in order to do that, he has to be kind of like a wet fish, not responsive at all. Because if he hugs back at all and has a lustful thought, he's broken the rule. So this gets very tricky, and this tends to be the difference in practicing for a monk practicing in the West, in Western communities, that rather than practicing in Asia or practicing in Asian communities in the West. So these can get very tricky. My own experience is that after bumbling around with this for a little while, I finally realized that I will not permit a woman to hug me, and the problem is that it's very difficult in